Hey y'all, welcome and or welcome back to my channel. My name is Janae, if you didn't know, and today's video is another crime and wine episode. So if you're ready, let's go. So y'all already know I got my wine right here, and we just gonna go ahead and jump right into the case. And today we talking about Khalil Wheeler-Weaver. And first of all, I don't know how many times I called this man Jason while I was like doing my research and stuff. So if at any point during this video I call this man Jason Weaver, I do apologize, Jason. I'm not coming for you. It's just that you're the only Weaver I know. I actually think this is my first American serial killer case. I don't have on no earrings. Oh my God. Y'all, I just have myself out here bald-headed at the ear. Like, I'm tripping. Tripping. Earrings are necessary. Anyway, so I think I was saying, this is my first American serial killer case. Yeah, spoiler alert, y'all. The man is a serial killer, so meh. But yeah, let's talk about it. His name is Khalil Wheeler-Weaver, and he was born in 1996. I don't got his exact birthday, so please bear with me. But we got his age, so we cool. But like I said, he's born in 1996 in Orange, New Jersey. And Orange, New Jersey, it's like a small, I guess they call it a township. And I really don't know the difference between a township and a city. But from my understanding, a township is like a smaller spot within a city. I don't know. I really don't know. But it's really, really little. And it said that pretty much everybody know everybody. And just a little bitty place. And Khalil was born into a pretty good family. It's not really too much known about his childhood. But we do know that his stepdad was in law enforcement. And his uncle was also in law enforcement. So his stepdad was a police detective, and his uncle was a police detective, but he had retired by the time this case started. And Khalil went to Orange High School, which obviously is the high school in his township. And he was described as like the quiet type. He didn't really talk too much. He didn't play sports. He didn't date. He didn't go to like the parties. So he didn't really go to none of the school dances or nothing like that. And somebody who went to school with him described him pretty much as like not popular, but not bullied either. So he pretty much just existed. In high school. He just went to get the grades and graduate and be done. But his best friend said that he was hilarious. He said he didn't really talk too much. He said he was always like a quiet type of person. But he said when Khalil opened his mouth, whatever came out of his mouth was just absolutely hilarious. So apparently he was funny, but just, you know, quiet funny. And in his later teenage years, he would kind of break out of his shell and he would start DJing at parties, which I thought was really weird considering he wasn't a party type of person, you know what I mean? But hey, to each his own. He became a DJ and he started DJing at parties, and his name was DJ Blackout, aka Mr. Make a Move. And y'all can find 2 videos of his on YouTube, because apparently he started a YouTube channel and then just abandoned it, because there's literally only, no, he got 3 videos. One of them is 2 seconds long, and then the other 2 are of him DJing. So if y'all want to hear his work or see what he got going on, or had going on, because he ain't no DJ no more, but if y'all want to hear that, then y'all can go ahead and head on over to his little YouTube page, I guess. He will also go on to become a security guard. And I guess if you want to say keep like the family tradition going, I guess that's the route he was trying to take, because he was also looking up stuff to become a police officer, like trying to see what tests you got to take, what qualifications you need to become a police officer, which I'm not really 100% sure why he was looking it up when he could have just asked his daddy and his uncle, but neither here nor there. Anyways, so yeah, he wanted to become a police officer. However, he would take on a career that was a little less on the legal side of things, if you will. So it is now August 2016, and Khalil is 20 years old. It's actually August 31st to be exact, and he riding down Nye Avenue in Newark, I can't say that word, in Newark, New Jersey, when he came across 2 young ladies. One was named Robin West and the other was named Bernicia Patterson. And they get to talking, and it's clear that these 2 ladies are working the streets. And Bernicia asked Khalil, you know, which one of the 2 ladies he was trying to pick up. So he points to Robin, and Robin gets in the car. Now, once Robin gets in the car, Bernicia does what I would consider to be a very smart thing. And she takes down his license plate number, and she tells him, you know, look, take care of my sister because I love her. Don't do nothing stupid. Unfortunately, that would be the last time that Bernicia saw her best friend. So Khalil took Robin to an abandoned house, and he ended up killing her there and leaving her body there. And early the next morning, a couple neighbors who lived close to the abandoned house, they called the police because there was a fire. And once the police and fire department got there, they put out the fire and went inside the house and found a body, which was the body of Robin. Unfortunately, her body was so badly burned that they were unable to identify her for another 2 weeks, which wouldn't be until they were able to get her dental records. So let's talk about Robin for a second. Robin West was born on September 5th, 1996 to her mother, Anita Mason, and her father, Leroy West, in West Philadelphia. As a child, Robin grew up in the church. She even sang in the church choir. I think she actually led the church choir at some point. And she absolutely loved to dance. She loved to express herself through her clothes and her hair. And she was very, very strong-minded, even at a young age. And she had a problem, I don't want to say a problem, but she kind of had a problem dealing with authority and rules. And not necessarily because she was trying to be a rebel, but more or less because she was so strong-minded in the fact that, like, whenever she got something put in her head, whenever she decided on something, whenever she wanted to do something, that's just what it was gonna be. And that, of course, caused problems because her mom, she just really wanted to protect her. She just really wanted what was best for her, you know, as a parent would. And the same for her dad, because she mostly lived with her mom. But like I said, they butted heads a lot because of Robin's strong will. And so at some point she ended up living with her dad. And once he started enforcing the rules, then she was kind of like, peace, I'm out of here too. And that forced her mom to send her to Wordsworth Academy, which was a school for children with mental and behavioral issues. But as most of us know, schools like this they're not usually the best. And that's the case with Wordsworth. And there have been quite a few complaints about Wordsworth. I'm not 100% sure if the school is still open right now, but at the time it was a terrible, terrible place. I don't think her mom knew that at the time until after the fact, but like I said, she did have a bunch of behavioral issues, so her mom just did what she thought was best for her. And so that's where she went when she was 14, and that is also where she met her best friend, Bernicia. And they obviously became super, super close. They were best friends. Like I said, they called each other sister. They were just two peas in a pod, y'all. And when Robin turned 18, she left her mom's house and she decided to move out on her own. And as a means of work, she decided that she would go into the line of exotic dancing. And that's exactly what she did. Her and Bernicia went into it together. And on the side, they were also sex workers. So fast forward to 2016. It's August. Robin's birthday coming up. And so she decided, like, hey, Bernicia, let's go take a trip to New Jersey. Because I told you she was from Philadelphia. So she decided to take just like a little quick trip to New Jersey. And when they got there, they stayed in a hotel for a couple of days. But just a couple of days into their trip, they ran out of money and didn't really have anywhere else where to stay because they couldn't pay for the hotel no more. And so not being one to sit on their hands and look for a handout or beg people for money, they decided to go ahead and make money in one of the ways that they knew how. And that was in the sex industry. So they went over to Nye Avenue, which was known for that. And this was actually Robin's first time street walking. But she had Bernicia there with her. And like I said, Bernicia did the right thing. She wrote down this man's license plates. And unfortunately, she just never returned from her evening with Khalil. So since Bernicia hadn't heard from Robin all day, she decided to call and make a missing persons report with the police. And when she called them, she gave this man's license plate number, a description of the car and everything. And of course, it matched the description of Khalil's car because that's the car that she left in. And if I'm not mistaken, I could be wrong here, so just take this with a grain of salt. But I do believe that this is the point where the police questioned Khalil about picking Robin up. And he actually admitted to it, but he explained that, you know, they did what they did and then he dropped her off and he showed the police where he dropped her off at, and then they kind of just like, oh, okay. Because technically they really didn't have nothing on him at this particular time. This is only a day or so after she went missing, and so they hadn't identified her body yet. And also, he was straightforward. He said, yeah, I did see this woman, XYZ. So they kind of just moved along, and then I feel like never really looked into it again because of the line of work she was in. So Khalil had pretty much just claimed his first victim and essentially got away with it. He wouldn't strike again until October 22nd. Khalil pulled up to a Popeyes in Newark, New Jersey, and it was pretty much just a similar situation to the last time. He ran across two ladies, one being 33-year-old Joanne Brown and her best friend Amina Nobles. Now, Joanne had a pretty troubled childhood. She was born in Augusta, Maine, and she was one of 7 children. And she moved to New Jersey when she was about 5 years old. She was described as loving fashion and loving to change up her hairstyle. And pretty early on in life, she was diagnosed with bipolar disorder and schizophrenia. It's not 100% sure when this diagnosis happened, but it did happen. And despite this, she did graduate high school, but unfortunately she would fall victim to drugs. And in an effort to support her habits, she also was in the sex industry. So she was a sex worker, but she didn't really want to lead this type of life. This is just pretty much all that she knew. So it was really easy for her, and it got her the money that she needed to support her habit. But like I said, this is not the type of life that she wanted to live. So she did indeed try to get help, and she entered into a program, but of course the program had rules and regulations, and unfortunately Joanne wasn't able to abide by these rules and regulations because, like I said again, it was just easy money for her. So she would easily fall back into the sex work, drug world. And so back to October 22nd, Khalil pulls up at the Popeyes and he points out Joanne, who introduces herself as London, and she hops in the car. Now, usually when Joanne get into a car with anybody, she's calling her friend Amina to let her know, like, hey, this is where we're going. This is when I should be back. Da 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 da. This is all the information that I have. And pretty much, once again, doing the right thing, being smart about it, letting people know where you are, where you're going to be, and when you're expected to return. This particular time was a little bit different though, because she had handed her phone off to a friend who needs to make an emergency call. So when she got into the car, she didn't have her cell phone. So instead of using her phone to call Amina, she used Khalil's phone. She asked him could she use his phone, and surprisingly, he allowed her to use his phone to make a phone call, and she called Amina, told her everything that she needs to tell her, and then gave the phone back to Khalil. So when they drove off, Khalil took her to 354 Highland Avenue, and this was another abandoned house. And once they got into the house, Khalil duct taped her from the eyes to the chin, essentially suffocating her with duct tape that he had left there previously because he knew that he was going to take someone there to commit this act on them. He duct taped her and strangled her with a jacket and left her on the landing of the stairs and just went home, which he lived only 2 minutes away. That just is like, how do you live so close to a place where you commit these crimes? I don't get it. But anyways, so he goes home and he looks through his call log and he sees the number that Joanne called before they drove off. And he decides to call this number. So once he calls the number, Amina answers and she's like, hey, is this London? And then the person, like Khalil, he just started breathing like a weird creeper. Like, ugh, I don't know. Anyway, so he didn't say nothing. He just breathing like a weirdo. And Amina's like, hello? And so she just hung up. And then she tried to call back. She actually tried to call back multiple times, but Khalil didn't answer the phone, so she didn't know what to do. And then once Joanne never came back and once Joanne never called her, she decided to report her friend missing to the police. And once again, I do believe that they questioned Khalil about this because Joanne had, all of his information and everything else too. And plus, Amina had the cell phone number of the person who took Joanne because she called from his cell phone. And so they were able probably to track him that way. And he talked to these people again. Now, I could be wrong about like the time frame in which he talked to the police, but I do know for a fact that he was questioned by police about Joanne and Robin, and somehow he was able to just not get arrested. That part I really just don't understand, because if this is the person who's been last seen with not one, well, yeah, because by this time she was identified. It took her 2 weeks to be identified. So this is like a whole month later. So this person is the last person to see not one, but 2 people. Like, he's the last person to see both of them. And y'all don't think that's funny? Because I think that's funny. I'm just saying. But I'm not a detective, so. So again, he pretty much just gets away with this. So now the next victim's name is Tiffany Taylor, and she was attacked in November of that year. So just about a couple weeks, like I think maybe like 2 or 3 weeks after Joanne. But for her, we're going to have to take it back to the beginning of 2016, or, towards the beginning of the year, because she actually met Khalil prior to her attack. So earlier in 2016, she meets Khalil through a friend. They hang out like maybe once or twice, and Khalil becomes obsessed with this woman. And he starts texting her and calling her and trying to pretty much just trying to hook up with her, but she's not here for it. She don't really want to hook up with him. First of all, he was having sex with her friend. And second of all, he was way too young for her, in her opinion, because she was 30. I think because she was 33 and he was 20. And so she was really not trying to have herself no young tenderoni. And plus, he was probably a creep anyway. But either way, she didn't want to talk to him. But anyways, like I said, her name is Tiffany Taylor, and she grew up in New Jersey until it was time for her to go to college. And so she moved to Florida with her mom and went to Valencia College. If I'm not mistaken, I do believe she studied psychology and dance, but I'm not 100% sure about that. And so that's what she did for the next 2 years until she got pregnant, and then she decided to move back to New Jersey, and this is when she met Khalil. And as a means to an end, she fell into sex work as well. And eventually, instead of just trying to hook up with her as like a potential girlfriend, he would actually start texting her and like begging her for sex, because I think he might have known that she was a sex worker at some point, but by this point, Tiffany was just over it. She didn't want to deal with sex work no more. That just wasn't her thing no more. And she was just over it. She was tired of being looked at as a sex object. She didn't want that just to be the only main focus that people saw when they saw her. She was way more than just a sex worker and a sex object. So she was like really getting tired of this dude begging her to pay him, begging her, could he pay her for sex? And she was like, you know what? I'm just take things into my own hands. And so to teach him a lesson and make a quick buck at the same time, Tiffany just agreed to let him pay her for sex. And so Khalil jumped on it. He texted her the address to where he was at, his house. And she drove up to the house. She went into his house. How many times I'm about to say house? So she drove up, she went in and told him, look, I'm going to do this, but it's $200 up front. And he was like, cool. So he gave her the $200 up front. She took the money and was like, oh, wait, I left the condoms or something in the car, and I'll be right back. And she got in her car and took off. She took his money and left. So Khalil was just sitting there looking stupid in the face while Tiffany had just made an easy $200. All of that happened in April, and by November of 2016, Tiffany had been through quite a bit. Her mom was diagnosed with ovarian cancer. They had been evicted. She was sleeping in the car, and Tiffany had kids to take care of on top of her mom as well. And so, not being one to just again sit on her hands or look for a handout, she came up with another hustle. But it wasn't a sex worker though. She essentially became a drug runner for a construction worker who had a pretty bad drug habit, but he didn't want to be seen out here buying drugs. And so Tiffany would go get him what he wanted, take it back to him, and he would pay her for it. And all of that will be relevant in a second. But for now, Tiffany is pretty much just getting text and text and text after text after text of a man, or maybe not even a man, she don't know. It's an unknown number just begging her for sex, just begging, begging, begging. And so she was like, what the hell? This is not the type of work that I'm doing right now. I'm changing my number. And that's exactly what she did. She changed her number, but somehow this mysterious person got her new number, and they kept on begging her for the same thing. So Tiffany was finally like, you know what? I'm gonna get him the same way I got old boy earlier this year, and I'm gonna just rob him. So that's what she planned on doing. It's now November 15th. And so she told this person to meet her at the motel where she was dealing with the, remember the construction worker I just told you about a couple seconds ago? Yeah. So she had been dealing with him, and she has his car right now. So she told this person who been texting her to come and meet her at this motel. And so that's what they did. But when she saw him, she was like, okay, because he just really wasn't dressed for the weather. He had on a ski mask, all black. It was just not looking like a thing, but it do get cold in New Jersey, and it's November, so it's not really super weird to see a person in a ski mask. So she didn't really think too much about it, and the person got into the car and they drove off. So while they're driving, this person asked Tiffany to pull over because they had to pee. And so once they got out the car, That's pretty much all Tiffany remembers, because she woke up in the back seat being assaulted. And they actually ended up revealing themselves to her, and to nobody's surprise here, it was Khalil. And he was pretty much asking her, like, do I look familiar? You took my money, da 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 da. But Tiffany wasn't really trying to hear none of that, because she's pregnant at this time, she's being attacked, and she just don't want to die. And so she's like, please, please, please don't kill me, I'm pregnant, blah, blah, blah. And I'm not going to go into too many more details about the attack, but I will tell y'all that Tiffany is a fighter. So she ended up getting into Khalil's head, and she was just like, listen, you sent me your address. I got all this information about you on my phone. I don't have my phone with me. I left it at the hotel, blah, 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 blah. And Khalil is like, skirt, read the hell wine, because we can't have that. That is a problem. And so while Tiffany is in the back seat, she's handcuffed. He handcuffed her, and he drives back to the motel. Now Tiffany is double jointed, and she was able to get her hand out of the handcuff, but of course she didn't let Khalil see that. And so he's driving, and once they get to the motel, Tiffany book it. She heads straight to the hotel room that the construction worker is in. She gets to kicking on the door. He opens the door, and she like slam it behind him. And luckily, Khalil was not able to catch her. And she was in the hotel room, and he was like, Khalil was pretty much like panicking, like, oh my God, what the fuck? What am I supposed to do right now? And so he still had the car keys, and she's like, listen, just leave the car keys here, and I won't report it stolen. I'm not going to call the police and none of that. So Khalil, he pretty much just book it, run, but he drops the car keys on the stairs to the motel. Tiffany obviously called the police. She had called the police before she told him she wasn't going to call the police. And the police got there. And Tiffany telling them her story, telling them that she was handcuffed, duct taped, all of that. Y'all, the police pretty much laughed in her face. They treated her like a joke. You could hear him being condescending to her. He was like, well, you were handcuffed. How did you get out of the handcuffs? Oh, you were duct taped, so you just let them duct tape you? Like, you almost just want to punch dude in the mouth, because she's sitting here with a handcuff on her wrist. You can clearly see that she was duct taped. Like, sir, what the hell? What the hell? They dropped the ball. They dropped the ball on this one. And it was all because Tiffany, she wasn't even a sex worker no more, but they accused her of being a sex worker because she was in a hotel room with the construction worker, and the way that it looked, it just didn't have a good look to it. But either way, it don't matter. If a sex worker tells a John no, and that she want to get dropped back off at home, guess what? Or to wherever she got picked up, guess what? That means no. First of all, that's number one. Number two, if she was kidnapped, handcuffed, and all these kind of other things, I don't care what her line of work is. I don't care. I don't care. And y'all shouldn't either. That is assault. That is a crime. Take her seriously. Like, just because y'all think she's a sex worker, which she's not anymore, by the way, like, they just threw her to the wayside. It's a shame. It's what it is. It's absolutely disgusting. That's the better word. It's disgusting. That was pretty much Tiffany's interaction with the police. Nothing happened. Nothing came of it. But the sickest thing is that Khalil was across the street watching her talk to the police. If they had just done a canvas of the area, because I mean, she gave them his name, his description, his address. All they had to do was go to the man's house. But anyway, since the police were dicks, Khalil was able to get away with it once again. And if you ask me, he getting pretty cocky. It's like he keeps getting away with thing after thing after thing. He think he invincible. Not to mention he's a narcissistic asshole. Like, he think he better than the police. He think he can talk to the police and then just get away with it. Or he think that the police not gonna believe these women because of the line of work they in. Or whatever the case may be. But like, can you blame them? Because essentially that's what's happening. But anyways, like I said, since the police didn't do nothing about that, Khalil was able to claim another victim. Her name is Sarah Butler, and Sarah is one of 3 daughters to Victor and Laverne Butler. And growing up, Sarah was described as a bubbly, just fun-loving, energetic, happy, will see the light in any situation, will see the good in anybody type of person. And she absolutely loved. And I know I said that a lot of times, but like from every account that I could hear, it's like she was always in the corner dancing somewhere, or if y'all was sitting down talking, she was gonna get up and just start dancing. Like she absolutely loved to dance, and she even joined a couple of dance teams. And when she was 15, one of her dance teams went to the Apollo and they got third place with Sarah as the lead dancer. And so like that just shows y'all how much, like how good of a dancer she was. Because let me tell y'all something, Apollo, the people's is ruthless. Like they gonna let you know if you suck. And so obviously Sarah and her dance team did not suck at all because they got third place. So eventually Sarah grew up, graduated high school, and started going to college, which she was the first person in her family to ever do. She went to New Jersey City University, but she didn't really have the best experience there. She really didn't have a good time. She did not like her roommates, but it was what it was. So to kind of combat the fact that like she wasn't really making friends in college, she joined a social, I don't know if it's a social website or if it's a dating website. Either way, she joined a site called Tagged, and that's where she started talking to this person named Lil Yacht Rock. I don't like that name. Anyways, she started talking to this person named Lil Yacht Rock, and so they started conversing, and it wasn't long before Lil Yacht Rock was like trying to pay her for sex. So at first, because this is completely out of Sarah's like realm of thinking of anything, and so at first she like, no, I don't think so. But he kept pressing and she was like, you know what, I need some money, I gotta pay tuition, a little extra money won't hurt nobody. So she finally and reluctantly agrees, and he like, how much you looking for? And so she's like 500. And when he was like cool, she was like, oh, okay. And so they had made plans to meet up, but before they did, Sarah was kind of joking but kind of not really joking at the same time, and she was like, you're not a serial killer, right? And he was like, no. And so they had continued on with their plans to meet up, but the day that they were supposed to meet up, Sarah was kind of just like, I don't know. And she actually ended up standing him up, but he contacted her again and then asked what was up, and she was just kind of telling him like, okay, well, I was a little nervous, my bad, I'm so sorry about it, let's try this again. And so they did. They would meet up on November 22nd when Sarah was home from school for Thanksgiving break. Her mom had went to go pick her up, brought her home, and then Sarah asked to use the car so that she could go meet a friend. And that was the last time her mother ever saw her. And so she took her mom's car and she met Lil Yacht Rock, aka Khalil, at a designated place where he told her to pick him up. And that designated location was 354 Highland Avenue. And if y'all remember, that's the same place where he murdered Joanne. And Joanne's body is actually still in the house because she hadn't been discovered yet. It's only November 22nd right now, and Joanne wouldn't be discovered until December 5th. So Sarah pulls up, she pick up Khalil, and they drive to a 7-Eleven. And there's surveillance footage of him walking into the 7-Eleven. I think he bought beer and condoms, and he actually had on the same like kind of attire that he had on when he attacked Tiffany. But I guess, like I said, it get cold in New Jersey, so it's not unusual for somebody to have on a face mask, not unusual for people to wear all black in the wintertime. Like, it's just not an unusual thing. And so she didn't really think too much of it. He took her to Eagle Rock Reservation in West Orange, where she essentially met the same fate as Robin and Joanne. She was strangled and just left there under a bunch of brush, leaves, and debris. So when Sarah didn't come home that night like she was supposed to, her older sister Basania, she was kind of just like, what the hell is happening? This ain't normal. Have anybody talk to my sister? And everybody was pretty much just like, no. And she right there, right off the bat, just knew that something wasn't wrong. I don't know if it was instinct or if this is just so unlike her sister that she just knew something ain't right. And about 3 days later, one of Basania's friends was driving in New Jersey, and she actually saw her friend's mom's car abandoned. And obviously she knew that Sarah was missing, and so she called Basania, and they ended up calling the police, and they all went over to where the minivan was. Now, when they looked inside the minivan, the police, they didn't really see nothing out of the ordinary, but her sister and her friend did, because at the time of Sarah's disappearance, her hair was red, and so they saw some of her hair in the van, and they just knew. They just knew something bad had happened. And so instead of waiting on law enforcement, they decided to take matters into their own hands, and they hacked into Sarah's, like, I don't know how they did it, but they hacked into Sarah's like computer or something like that, and they found out, and they figured out that she was on this app called Tagged. They found the last person that she talked to, and it was Lil Yacht Rock. So they created themselves a fake profile, went and found Lil Yacht Rock, and started talking to him. And just like clockwork, he fell into the trap, and he started asking them for sex. Like, can he pay them for sex? Or her, whoever he thought she was. And they were like, okay, cool, meet us here, da 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 da. But instead of meeting a young sex worker like he thought he was about to meet, he was met by the police. So finally, they had a suspect, and investigators did their investigative work. And on December 6th, Khalil Wheeler-Weaver was taken into custody. Now, because of this, and him being the last person to speak to Sarah, they actually finally ended up getting his phone records and realized that he was the last person to talk to each and every one of these ladies. The young lady who they had just found on December 5th, the day before he got taken into custody, and the young lady who was found in the burning building. And I'm not 100% sure how, but it was found that this is the same person who attacked Tiffany. She might have seen him on the news and then came forward that way. I'm not 100% sure how that happened, but either way, it was confirmed that he indeed murdered three women and attacked a fourth. And it just sucks that it took that long for him to be caught, when he really could have been caught after the first time, because she had his license plate number. They went and talked to him. Even after the second time, they had his description. They had his car description. They had his cell phone number. That should have been suspicious right there. And then you had a survivor, someone who had this man's address. Like, come on, y'all. And I'm glad that the young ladies did what they did and catfished the hell out of him. But none of this had to happen. Unfortunately, Robin still would have been a casualty, but her death could have prevented the other two and an attack. Like, but luckily he was caught. He was only 20 years old at the time, and I think that's what kind of blows me. But yeah, so he went to trial in 2021. Was that 2021? Was that this year? Oh shit. So he went to trial this year, and he was essentially sentenced separately for each of the crimes that he committed. So he had a separate sentence for Robin, Joanne, Tiffany, and Sarah, and they were all to run concurrently. Consecutive. And they were all to be served consecutive to one another, which means basically that it was one after the other. So essentially, the man was sentenced to 160 years in prison for his crimes. So he ain't never getting out of jail. But he tried to say, like, during the sentencing phase, he basically said that he was set up, he didn't do it. But literally, cell phone data puts him at the time and location of each individual's last moments. And there are people who saw him leave with these people. And so it's kind of like, nah, bro, you wasn't really set up. You was just dumb, because you use your phone for everything. And when I say everything, I mean everything. After he set the house on fire, he asked Siri for directions home. And when the firefighters was putting the fire out, he was out there watching. His phone was with him. He was out there watching. He spent 20 minutes at the abandoned house before he brought Joanne there. He was outside watching when Tiffany was talking to the police. Like, he did it. He did it, guys. But yeah, y'all, that's all I have for this case. Thank you so very much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you all in the next one.